Podcast CEO na ostří nože přináší společnost Kogikon, která zvyšuje výkonnost firem díky změně jejich firemní kultury. Sledujte www.kogikon.cz. IKEA is not like other companies, and we don't want to be. We like to question existing solutions, think in unconventional ways, experiment and dare to make mistakes, always for a good reason. We believe in empowering people. Giving and taking responsibility are ways to grow and develop as individuals. This stands on IKEA's website about culture and values. Is that true? The CEO of IKEA Czech, Hungary and Slovak, David McCabe, will answer. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Do you, as CEO, dare to make mistakes?
Well, actually, that's...
In the role of CEO, I mean.
Yes, I can say absolutely. It's a very deep-rooted part of the IKEA culture and values, actually, the privilege that I see it to be able to make mistakes. And what was always lovely is that Ingvar talks so passionately about why it's not only okay to make mistakes, but actually important, because it's only when we're asleep we're not making mistakes. So I make mistakes every day, actually.
What was the last mistake?
Well, that's a good question. The last mistake I did, let me think. I think, that is a good question. I should have been prepared for that question today. Maybe the mistake is not having a mistake ready to share. I think that in general, it's about testing and trying. It's about feeling the freedom. So I for example, might have, asked if we could look at a particular way to reach more of our customers that perhaps wasn't as effective as it could have been. But it's good that we actually tried that. So
it's not about afraid to make a mistake.
Yeah, it's actually actively encouraged. I've been in various discussions with our co-workers to do exactly what you just did there, to share actually not just successes but mistakes that we've recently made, so that we feel comfortable to be able to share that. I think again, Ingvar, his view was that it's actually worse if you're the type of person that is trying to find a way to make it that everything you've done is perfect. Everything you've done is right. And to open up to a discussion around what hasn't been so good. It's where the learning sits.
IKEA has been around for 80 years. To what extent has founder Ingvar Kamprad influenced the current corporate culture?
I mean, Ingvar's impact on the culture is enormous. It's actually quite difficult to separate Ingvar from the IKEA culture. Like you mentioned, we've celebrated recently our 80-year anniversary, so we've been thinking a lot about Ingvar. I've been thinking a lot about Ingvar, and I truly believe he's a genius. I think that word tends to be overused, but in his case, I think it's absolutely correct for a few reasons. One is the absolute simplicity of our vision. We're here to help people have a better life, and if we can contribute to that, that's very much an interesting thing for us at IKEA. If we can't, it isn't. Another reason is the values he put together to bring together a group of people that are best placed to make that vision a reality. And I think that, when I think IKEA culture, I think Ingvar, and I think many of us do when we have that conversation.
You've spent more than 25 years at IKEA. How much has the corporate culture evolved during that 25 years?
I think that one of the great things that Ingvar did was really try to make sure that the culture, or at least the values that create the culture, were so clearly defined that it lived on beyond him and into the future. I would say that those values in principle haven't changed. And I think that's a good thing. Even if I look at the periods when we've gone through particularly tough times, COVID as an example, the values didn't change to accommodate COVID. I think what happened is we looked at different ways to use those values. So, that in most of the IKEA world, and certainly here in this region, we had to close our stores. So the values that we had was perfect to bring our co-workers together to adapt to that situation, how they work through the changes, how they utilise the spaces in different ways, how they come with different offers for our customers. the values adapt in that sense of how we use them, but the core of why they are what they are, that doesn't change. And I think that's very positive.
So IKEA 25 years ago was the same as IKEA today?
I think from a values perspective, the reason that the values exist, why they're important and how they contribute to helping people live a better everyday life, I think that is the same. Of course, the world changes, business changes, and the application of those values can change. Like, for example, we've set very clear ambitions of what we want to achieve from a sustainability perspective. That's adapted and evolved. But the use of the values to achieve it, that I think is...
Yeah, maybe sustainability wasn't a topic 25 years ago, was it?
In the same way, it wasn't the same topic. I think that sustainability has always been at the core of Ingvar's the way he established the company. I mean, even if you look at the very, very early descriptions of what IKEA was to be, it talks about, wasting resources as one of the biggest crimes we can do. And in a sense, that was a precursor.
Yeah, I mean, to pick from the global perspective, as everybody's talking about sustainability and ESG today.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's one of those perfect examples where our values help us in that sense, is that when we step into supporting a topic like that, or if we step into something we believe in, we want to make sure that we can contribute. And sustainability is a good example of that, yeah.
You are CEO of IKEA for Czech Republic, Hungary and Slovakia. Mm-hmm. What do you aim for as CEO?
Well, of course, first and foremost, I'm here to help realise the vision that IKEA have.
Of course.
That's number one. We're here to grow the business here in this region. We feel incredibly humbled that people turn to us as a first choice to help improve their homes in the Czech Republic, Hungary and Slovakia. But of course, there's more to be done. I have a slightly unusual role compared to perhaps other companies. So I'm CEO, as you mentioned, but I'm also the Chief Sustainability Officer for the three countries also. And we've just been talking about sustainability. We've set incredibly ambitious sustainability targets for the region, and it needs real movement and real action. So that's very much part of my agenda today. I think another thing that is a big focus for me, of course, we're in a cost of living crisis throughout the world, and people are feeling that hardship, not only here in our region, but all across Europe. And we've always had the ambition that we want to make our range available to those even with the thinnest wallets. But today, that's perhaps more important than it's ever been. So I would say that one of our biggest focuses across the whole of the IKEA value chain is how we reduce our cost in order that we can lower our prices for our customers. And, even this month, we have the opportunity to lower prices on around 3,300 articles. It's the biggest price investment I've ever been a part of at IKEA. And, people come into our stores today will see significantly lower prices than they did a few months ago. That takes a lot of effort and energy from our entire team.
We were talking about making mistakes. For those who are not so much familiar with IKEA or IKEA values, how would you describe these values and the core culture of IKEA for them?
There was a moment where Ingvar realised that he needed to describe the values more clearly. So I'm very lucky that I can actually just essentially dig into what Ingvar stated. But if I give you some examples, togetherness is very much at the centre of our culture and values. We really believe that bringing people together around a topic, the best placed people to work on particular things will always be more powerful. We have at the core of our business a cost-conscious mindset, as we've just been talking about, and how we have the lowest possible cost to pass that on to our customers, but also remove complexity and bureaucracy from our business in general. Deep in our culture is renewing our business. We try not to stand still. We have been successful for 80 years. We have the luxury to be, the number one home furnishing company in many countries, but we can't stand still. So we're looking for ways to invigorate and improve our business. but always doing that with a meaning, which I think is we're not interested in anything we can think of to improve, but the things that really connect most with our values. I think one that particularly as a team we've been talking a lot about recently is leading by example. We want to make sure that IKEA is not a hierarchical company. We don't receive a set of directions from 3 people sitting in a global office and then implement that in every store. Our co-workers have the opportunity to contribute, and we need to take that leadership together as a group.
IKEA originates from Sweden, and Sweden is a country which is known for maybe a collective approach more than other European or American countries. How does this Swedish maybe ethos or culture align or differ with the culture of the other countries where IKEA has the stores?
Mm-hmm. It's a good question. I mean, obviously, IKEA is a Swedish company. Ingvar was Swedish, and the heart of IKEA, where we produce our range, is still in the middle of the forest in Sweden.
Yeah.
So the
and you come with this to completely capitalized USA.
Yeah. the thing I've always found that it fits very well, because we bring together at IKEA people from the beginning who share those same values, and obviously the Swedish culture is part of that. So I think that I've always found that having the opportunity to have IKEA represented in various different countries, like you say, that have a different background or approach, having people from those countries, it just makes the totality of the IKEA culture and values richer. It isn't like, in my experience, a conflict. It just makes it actually more complete. So it fits, in my experience, quite nicely with all of the different locations in which we operate.
Did you see some clash of cultures?
Clash of cultures. No, I think that first and foremost, because if we take, for example, our service office here in Prague, representing the three countries, I think we have 40 different nationalities. So it's not that we have this kind of idea of here's the country and then here's the IKEA culture. It's very much we encourage people to move and share those ideas. So I think that I've seen more kind of the Swedish culture bringing benefit. Like, for example, we have our Swedish fika at the coffee break. That's very important in Swedish culture. Perhaps not so much in Indian or Chinese culture, but in the IKEA locations in those countries, we embrace it to come together, to have a discussion over coffee, even if the need was different. I think I've also seen at the beginning, when IKEA come to a country, maybe the corporate culture that we come into, there's some differences. Like when I was in the global position, I visited our colleagues in Japan, and they were telling me the story that when they first arrived, not one single co-worker in the unit would leave for the day until the manager left, which is very much part of the culture, but it's not part of IKEA's culture. So we helped create an environment where there was perhaps a little bit more of a work-life balance, and we were, your role here is here, it's for this time, and you contribute during that time, and then you should go home and spend time with your family. So I wouldn't say it's a conflict, but more just, again, bringing together the different cultures.
When you are talking about Asia, maybe Asia people, how much are they willing to make mistakes?
Make mistakes?
Or dare to make mistakes? Because they corporate culture or even country culture or the culture as the whole nation is, I think, completely different. And if you bring Swedish values to that country, I can't imagine that this works smoothly, as you mentioned.
I think it's a very good question, and I haven't worked directly in Asia, so I can't speak to it firsthand. But this is where I think some of the responsibility sits, and that's where the values is important for all aspects. So I would see my responsibility to lead by example, to help the co-workers understand that it is okay to make a mistake, and you should feel comfortable to say that. I think that it may take time in certain areas, or a different amount of time compared to the culture that we're stepping into. But I think it's this is where it's important to lead by example in those situations.
Did you have to align or adjust your approach to this Asia culture in some ways, maybe?
I don't think so directly in that sense. I've certainly, in my experience, never been part of adjusting the IKEA values or the approach based on the country. I would say quite the opposite. You know, especially in my early time at IKEA when I began travelling, I was actually so pleasantly surprised. You know, I travelled for the first time away from London, went 4,000 kilometres away from the family, and yet I felt quite at home with IKEA because obviously I was landing somewhere with a group of people that shared the same basic values, and that's been my overwhelming experience across the IKEA world. Not that we've had to then adjust those values because of the country that we're operating.
So where IKEA is, you are at home.
I've always felt that.
Sounds nice.
Yeah, it's been lovely. For me particularly, having the chance to make that home in various different countries at various different times. It's always felt like being at home.
Ingvar Kamprad passed away 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. Did you notice any shifts in IKEA's culture? Because I think that his children now are in the board of IKEA. Mm-hmm. So did you notice any shift?
I think that was the again one of the genius elements of Ingvar. He spent so much time ensuring that the values and the culture, the approach of IKEA lived beyond him, and it absolutely has. In the 70s, he actually put together a document that he called the Testament of a Furniture Dealer. In fact, I have a little copy of it. You can have this if you want, this little miniature copy. And that outlines the
I will make a photo for the website text of the podcast, the transcription.
It outlines the values and how they can be applied. And I think that this has helped to keep it alive beyond any individual person. And I think that was the genius of Ingvar to do that.
Do you, on the other hand, observe that the values can be tricky in some way? Maybe the cost obsession, not to make it too cheap.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that the quality can be too low. Maybe I guess I don't know.
No, it's a very good question. I understand why you would ask that. I think that. The misunderstanding of the application of anything can be dangerous. I'm not a big believer myself in kind of relying on just kind of headlines in that sense, but more of a deeper understanding of what we're actually trying to achieve. And you just gave a perfect example there.
Yeah, because you don't want to be like a China producing cheap stuff.
Well, cost consciousness is not about cheap products. Cost consciousness, in fact, I think is the opposite. It's about removing all unnecessary costs from the way we operate in order that we can have lower prices. So when we design any product, any single thing you see at IKEA, it applies across the entire range. We're crystal clear on the dimensions of design that we want to put in that product. Of course, it should be beautiful. We should be known for these articles. And luckily we are. It has to function, and particularly in today's environment, in many cases, it has to function in multiple ways and have lots of clever features. But there are 3 other things that are absolutely critical in every IKEA product. One is sustainability. So it has to be, we're looking for renewable, recyclable materials. We're looking for things that help people save money, save energy. It has to last. The quality is not a compromise. And we have very rigorous testing and expectations on the quality. And all of that starts with the price. So quite literally, when an IKEA designer is looking at bringing in a new product, it's the price point that we begin with, and those other elements must be delivered. So cost consciousness is a vehicle to deliver lower prices for our customers.
At the beginning, you set the price of each product. Mm-hmm. Yes. For example, I will sell, or I want to sell this table, and this table we will sell it for, 1,000 crowns, for example. And you are looking for the design and each part of design, literal design of the product.
Yeah, exactly.
To match the price.
Exactly, and it may seem kind of the other way round of how it's done in many cases. But one of the things that, and again, you have to perhaps forgive me, with 80 years on the table, I'm thinking about Ingvar and what he said a lot. But if we use your example of a table, Ingvar he said that, and he's absolutely so right, anyone can make a table for €2,000. It's not hard. But to make a table for €100, that's tough. That requires you to put all the elements of an entrepreneurial energy into finding every solution to make that table beautiful, to make it function perfectly, to make it last for 50 years, to make it coming from sustainable materials, and to do that for €100. That's the magic. So that's why that price point is so important to start with, and why, for example, one of many values, the cost consciousness mindset, allows you to do that. So I think it's you can't separate the cost conscious element with the pricing element. They're kind of twins in that sense.
How important are IKEA's values in the requirement process? Do the people want to work in IKEA because of the values, or for something else?
I think absolutely. So I think the importance of it, and then what it means to people. People want to come to IKEA because of the values. Whenever I visit, I'm regularly in our stores, and I try to meet a new coworker every time. And I'm always happy to meet a coworker that's only been with IKEA for a few months, because then you really hear, what do people expect and why did you come to IKEA? And I would say almost always the reason is because I've heard of the values of IKEA. I've heard of it's maybe a bit different, and I wanted to understand that. So it's very, very important for us in that perspective. In terms of the importance in the recruitment process, I would say it's the most important thing. So we have, whenever I'm meeting a new colleague and considering whether they could be part of the organisation, it's values first. The competence and the experience, of course, these things are important and nice, but we believe that we can teach people skills. we can give people experiences. Values is something that's much deeper, and if there's not a fit in that element, then in my experience it's very rarely successful. So when I'm in a recruitment process and the leaders across the business, it's values first in that sense.
You mentioned that you spend some time in the stores.
Mm-hmm.
How many time do you spend there? I don't know, weekly or monthly?
Well, I actually, when I stepped into this role, because, COVID was a difficult time in terms of, I mentioned the value of togetherness at IKEA and how important it is.
Not even the customer can step in the store.
Exactly. So you can't spend time with the customers and hear how they feel about the experience. You can't spend as much time with the co-workers, at least the group we used to. So when I rejoined, I joined here in 2 years ago, exiting COVID, I actually switched the way I organise my agenda, and the first thing I do when I have the empty plan for the year is booking the visits for the units. So I'm quite regularly in the visits, at least every, we have 8 locations or full-size stores in the region, and I'm there 3-4 times a year in every location. So that means I'm out in a store every few weeks, every week.
And do you talk to your customers as well, or to your employees only?
Absolutely, the customers.
Hi, I'm the CEO of IKEA.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
When we have the sometimes I need some support with the language, unfortunately. But for us, that's always been important. We don't believe in relying solely on analytics and data. That, of course, is important, and we use it. But for us, spending time with the customer, talking about their dreams, talking about their needs, that tells you so much more. It allows us to ensure that what you expect, what you need, is visible, and you feel that in our physical and digital channels. So quite recently, we actually spent some time in some homes of some people in Hungary. We do home visits quite regularly, and it's fascinating because then you really understand what people need. Also, what perhaps when there's quite simple solutions to challenges that they're facing that we could support with, but they're not aware. So it's also how we do a better job of making what we do more visible to people.
We were talking about values and that people want to work with IKEA because of that values. But what happens if somebody is not aligned with the values? Which behaviors, for example, are not tolerated by IKEA at all? Mm-hmm. And what happened as next step then?
Right. It helps because we are so clear in the recruitment processes that we're looking for this values fit, and it means that for the most part we have people that share
you provide
that.
some culture check or something like that.
We do during the interviews and the recruitment. In the early parts of people's onboarding into IKEA, we spend a lot of time talking about the values, and then every year we talk to our co-workers to just understand where are we doing a good job, where are we not doing quite as good job. Then, of course, there are always times when perhaps behaviour isn't fully following. So we like to work with our training and our learning modules to have like real life examples for our co-workers so that we can help give them the guidance of how to behave in certain situations. We find that helps a lot. Then there are some things that we don't tolerate, discrimination of any kind, for example. That is so far away from our values that is simply not a fit for us if we have that behaviour.
And what will happen if some toxic, non-tolerated behavior will occur?
Well, we obviously hope that can be resolved way before it becomes to that extent. But I think if we have behaviour that doesn't fit to that degree, like if it was just discriminatory behaviour and stuff like that, then that's just a person that we wouldn't want to be part of the IKEA family. So it's really as simple as that.
You mentioned a lot of values, a lot of processes, sorry, I'm not able to say this word in English.
That's all right. Cost consciousness.
Cost consciousness.
Yeah.
Terrible word. Anyway, you are talking about a lot of values and processes and design processes. Where is the origin, or where does all these cool ideas spark from?
Yeah, that's one of the exciting things about being part of IKEA. We don't have a situation where, for example, the whole of the design of the store is decided and then everyone just follows a plan and executes. We invite all of our co-workers to be part of the creation of IKEA. And, if an idea comes from me or the team in the service office, or it comes from a co-worker who's facing the customer in the store and talking about their problem, we welcome all of those. So we try to have a simpler kind of a methodology for co-creation as possible. But some of the best things that you'll see in an IKEA store today, that they come from our co-workers, which makes total sense because they're facing the customer every day. They're hearing the need, they're understanding the challenges, they're working with the tools that we have in the store. So it's quite a pleasure when you see the level of sharing of ideas and solutions that come from the teams around the whole of the IKEA world.
So maybe say that this is the everyday contact and everyday little conversation with your customers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's amazing what you can learn if you just, stand at the cash lane and ask a customer how they experience this, or if when you're designing a kitchen, you understand what exactly would you like to do with this, and then maybe that solution is applicable to another 1,000 people. So the best ideas come from very, simple origins, but they can have massive, massive impacts.
We can now see the rising trend of some kind of multifunctional furniture. Is this the answer for a rising cost of everything?
I think there's big opportunity in taking multifunction furniture even further. I will say that the trend is already here, and particularly, accelerated by COVID. We've seen the dining table become a school. We've seen that, the bathroom become a spa. We've seen the bedroom become a place to hang pictures. Multi-function is already existing quite a lot in our furniture, or a lot. There's been actually recently we've been doing some exercises with certain products where we've surprised ourselves by how many applications a single product can support within the home. It's quite amazing. And we need to obviously show our customers how that can work. Then we're trying to take even more of a step into this. There's some testing going on in a couple of countries globally where we're looking at, true, almost transformational products where they literally are a bed, they transform into a home office, then they transform into a dining table, then they transform into a living room sofa. One single product. So I think it's very interesting for the future, and it's perfect for IKEA because of the design principles that I talked about earlier. If we can deliver those multifunctional pieces, with that price point, with that quality, with that sustainability, it'll be perfect.
You've mentioned several times discrimination or diversity. IKEA is stepping up in the diversity and inclusion topics. Mm-hmm. What is the answer of society to this practice of IKEA? Mm-hmm. To be active in such topics, maybe sometimes controversial topics?
Yeah, as you say, this is something that is it's incredibly aligned with our values. It's very important to us, and we've decided to step in even more heavily in the period in front of us. I will start by saying, for us, it's essential that particularly our co-workers can feel at home when they're at IKEA, can feel that they can be themselves, if I should say it that way. So the whole topic is extremely important. I would say that if we choose to step into a topic, we want to make sure that we're able to positively influence and contribute in that area. But we see many examples, particularly over the last period, where we've done that. For sure, in supporting LGBTQ rights, and there's been a few firsts for us this year. We for the first time raised the Progress Pride flag above our stores in Hungary. We participated and sponsored the Pride marches in all three of the countries that we operate, and that was the first time that we've done that. We are trying to make our locations and employment IKEA much more attractive for people with disabilities. We want more people with disabilities to join IKEA and help us with their diversity and their perspectives. We've been working a lot to make it easier for people coming or escaping some quite terrible situations in their home countries and becoming refugees here in our countries, giving them the skills in order to be employed, whether it's IKEA or not. We want to be part of that. And then we've had an ongoing work with various NGOs around supporting the victims of domestic abuse, and we're really still pushing and hoping that we can actually that will result in changes to the law that give people much more support in those situations.
You mentioned Hungary, and for example, Viktor Orban and all the Hungarian society is not much familiar with the LGBT community. How much do you feel that you need to educate the society? It's not important if in Hungary or maybe the same as in Czech, but in some point of view, to educate that it's really important for you and the society to be familiar with all these people.
I think that to the point you're making, if you look at these different topics that we just discussed, society is in a different place in the different countries on that journey. Sometimes more at the beginning, other times more advanced. So I think it's extremely important that we particularly in those examples where we are at the beginning of the journey, that we speak very openly and actively about our point of view on these topics. I think it's I can understand sometimes the reservation, but for us.
I mean, how brave you must be to be able to open these topics in Hungary.
I think yes, the braveness it's a good word, and it is true. You know, if we're asking, or we're not asking, but if our co-workers are deciding to participate and speak openly, to be the one raising the flag in the store, to be the one at the front of the Pride Parade, yes, there's a degree of bravery there. But I'm truly humble when I see the actions of our co-workers in that regard. I think it's absolutely fantastic. It makes it an absolute pleasure to be part of the team and watch people take those steps.
This was David McCabe, CEO of IKEA Czech, Hungary and Slovak. Thank you for sharing your insight with us.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
And Ivana Karhanová is signing off.